Good morning, everyone. This is the Coffee Break Show. I'm Vickie Helm, and you are on the Smart Life Club today. And today I have a pretty important message I want to deliver. And I had an epiphany this morning while I was working. And I even made notes for today. And I want to talk about one of the ways that we sabotage our success without really knowing it. One of the ways that we knock ourselves out of our own wishes, our own power, our own way of getting more success, more respect, more influence, more of what we want in our lives. And most of the time, we don't even know that we're doing it. Good morning, everybody, as I see you coming on board. It's so great to have you. Today is a tender subject that we're going to be talking about. And I did make notes for today. And I really want to talk about, hey, Robert, hey, Bob, hey, Suzanne, nice to see you guys aboard. I'm so excited that people are here, and I am going to be talking about a subject that it kills most people's success without them knowing it. Thanks, Robert. I see your love. Thank you. Hey, Barb. Good morning, everybody. So today I want to talk about the disease of feeling powerless. And in fact, powerlessness, or a feeling of powerlessness, it's so everywhere on the planet, and most people don't know how to do it. And I have notes right here on my computer, and the camera's up there, so I'm going to be looking back and forth. But it's how our ego deals with powerlessness. And so a powerlessness is a feeling of helplessness, and it's the feeling of helplessness inside us that we won't acknowledge for some reason. We won't say, ooh, I'm feeling powerless in this moment, because it's not really sexy, is it? Hi, I'm Vickie Helm. So glad to meet you. Today I'm feeling powerless. That doesn't happen. And so we want to make sure that we can at least identify it, because powerlessness has a tendency. Hey, Jeremy, nice to see you on board. Powerlessness has a tendency to wreak havoc in our lives for some reason. So when we feel powerless, we do all sorts of things that sabotage us. We judge others. We lie. People who feel powerless will lie to protect themselves from their own thoughts. You have a tendency to give your power away when you feel powerless. You want others to approve of you. You can become, oh, this is the thing. When you feel powerless, people have a tendency to feel defensive. When they feel defensive, they are feeling powerless, like they have no choice. And so what happens when we feel like, oh my God, I don't know what to do right now, I'm feeling powerless? We don't say that to ourselves. Instead, we become defensive. We might even become angry. We might, become seductive and try to seduce our way or bargain our way or whatever else, but we don't actually stop and say to ourselves, in this moment, what do I need? What do I want? How can I go ahead and create balance? So these things that we do that help us feel powerless. Who's laughing? There's no laughing. This is a serious conversation. So what we do when we feel powerless is, for some reason, we tend to surround ourselves with things that make us feel powerless. Now, when you feel powerless, a lot of people feel depressed. They have a lot of depression because they feel powerless. And a lot of times we learn powerlessness in our youth. And we continue this thing of being and feeling powerless. People who shop, they often shop because they feel powerless, and using money is a way we cope with powerlessness. So the things that make us feel powerless: bosses, jobs, authority figures, when you don't fit in and you're being bullied, when you have controlling parents, or governments that have laws that say what you can and can't do with your body, or do with your life, or do with whatever you want. These are the things that make you feel like you're under somebody's thumb, somebody else's control other than your control. And when you have that, you will feel powerless. And so what happens when we feel powerless? Well, I remember this as a teenager. I'd be so mad at a parent or a friend or boyfriend or something. I was so mad. And then in my mind, I would fantasize and replay that whole incident in my head, but I'd tell them off, or I'd tell them what I wanted to tell them, or I'd, get some friends on my side. But I would fantasize about winning the conversation because that's what my ego needed. And a lot of teens, a lot of people, heck, a lot of adults still do that. They're trying to figure out how to become powerful. And so we're going to talk about how to become powerful too, but we have to just actually recognize, how is it that becoming powerless, when we feel powerless, this is why we have people who use money, because when you're really rich, suddenly you feel powerful. And maybe you become rebellious. You're I'm powerful, I'm anti-establishment. Or you use knowledge. People that are so smart, and they're like, yes, I'm better than you because I am smart. All of those things are to protect and look at, or help us not look at, how powerless we feel in the world. But in order to be powerful, we have to acknowledge where we feel powerless. And powerlessness, once you feel like you're powerless, they tell you all sorts of ways you can become powerful. Those people who follow the rules are trying not to engage by just my life. I follow the rules. I went to college, I went a job, and this and that and the other. They feel equally as powerless. So when you start seeking the acceptance of other people, which in high school we do, we all want to look alike, we want to dress alike, we want to have the same brands, we want to look cool, be cool, act cool. All of that is getting acceptance from other people, because when we have acceptance from other people, somehow we feel powerful. Now, some people even use religion to feel powerful, because they feel so unworthy inside and so powerless that they try to seek God so they feel some sort of comfort. And maybe that works for them. I don't know. But I do know this. I do know that success requires, if you really want to get successful in your life, to have any kind of happiness, any kind of anything, when you can look at the tenderness in yourself and say, oh, if you can catch yourself in the moment feeling powerless. So for me, I know that when I'm defensive and that I'm feeling powerless right away. If I get to the point where I'm defensive and I feel powerless, I have to stop myself right then and go, wait. I'm feeling defensive in this moment. I'm feeling too defensive, and I got to stop myself and realize that I'm not helpless. That what happened to me when I did feel helpless, that boss, that ex, that toxic relationship, etc., isn't there anymore. And so what happens when we start, hey, Dee Dee, you made it on. So what happens when we start focusing on being powerless? We start creating it in our lives. Believe it or not, I think powerlessness can become an addiction. We become addicted to pleasing others. We become addicted to being a doormat so we can get approval from people. We become approval seeking. And a huge portion of our life gets lost because we feel powerless over and over and over again. So how do we become powerful? Suzanne says narcissists will make you feel powerless. Narcissism has become an epidemic in our entitled society. Being educated makes a huge difference in becoming aware of this. It's so big that it means the difference between helpless and success. It's interesting. This is really an interesting subject, because I think narcissist is a codependent relationship. I think narcissism and the powerlessness you feel in it is how we can become manipulated by the narcissist in the first place. If you didn't feel powerless, you would never be affected by a narcissist. A narcissist is looking for someone who feels powerless about themselves in the first place. And that becomes codependency. It's the combination between seeking approval from someone else and someone who wants to manipulate, use, control. And if you're in that narcissistic relationship and you don't realize that you feel powerless in general in your life, that narcissist can take you blind. They can walk all over you. And in the moment, it's so important to understand that power isn't about control. It's not about commanding something or someone. Power, true courage is absolutely soft. Thank you, Suzanne. I see that. It's true softness. It's true vulnerability. Once you become vulnerable, you realize for yourself that your power is in your willingness to feel your feelings, whether comfortable or uncomfortable. But when you feel your feelings, at least you're talking to you. You don't have to feel your feelings and shout them to everyone else. I usually do something like, oh, I'm feeling scared. What am I telling myself? Oh, I'm feeling happy. What am I telling myself? When you go ahead and you actually begin to put your attention and your focus inside of where you are inside, you will suddenly find kindness inside you and compassion. Kindness and compassion come from the willingness to literally get to where we are in our hearts and feel it. It's one of the toughest things to do, is feel that place in us that feels less than the rest of the world, like there's some false expectation we're supposed to hold up. And that false expectation, thanks for all the hearts and loves, guys. I really appreciate it, because that true courage, that true vulnerability to even talk about this subject, I really wrestled with that this morning. I was like, okay, do I say this? Do I not say this? I want to say that success comes when you unlock yourself from your own mind. When you unlocked yourself from your own mind, it means that you have to be willing to feel and do something different. You have to step out into the unknown. You got to take a step and rethink, reimagine, reevaluate who you think you are, what you think is possible, and how you think you can even get to the point where you want to change it. So the first thing is to say, you know what, powerlessness it's drilled into kids, especially in my generation. Kids were supposed to be seen, and I know you're all saying to yourself, not heard. That's right. And it was always that somehow the spare the rod and spoil the child didn't happen in our generation. Nobody spared the rod. And so what happens is there was a lot of, give respect to your elders. Bart says, I'm not so into labels. Each of us has the power to choose whether we accept another's actions to impact our own, and to what degree. That's correct. I so agree with that. It was beautifully said. And so what happens is, when you actually are willing to feel your powerlessness, your feeling of, oh, I don't feel powerful in this moment. Even if you feel shame comes on, or embarrassment, or humiliation, because that's what powerlessness feels like also. It's like if you have all the shame or guilt, or, I'm not as skilled as you are, or I'm not as good at playing this game as you are. I'm not good at that. If you can just accept whatever you're telling yourself as something that you're telling yourself, you'll see what it is that is creating the feeling of powerlessness. Whatever, because it's not the other person. It's not how good they are, handsome or pretty they are, or successful they are, or anything. You can feel complete joy about what somebody else gets. You only feel powerlessness in these 6 inches right here. When you start saying or repeating, maybe you had parents that were very, love today's coffee break. Thank you. You're melting my heart. When you get to the point where maybe you grew up with people telling you you were stupid, or you were ugly, or you're not capable, or you're not good enough, or whatever they told you that made you feel powerless at that moment, you might be repeating it to yourself over and over again, unconsciously, without even knowing it. And in that moment, when it's actually time to step up and have some courage, that conversation will come up. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You're not this enough, whatever that is. And how can you just feel not good enough and do it anyway? I mean, sometimes when I get on the coffee break show like today, I have to admit my heart's in my throat. And I'm going to share with you really big right now about why it's so important for me to show up. It's important for me to show up because all my growing up life, I didn't have parents that showed up. I had parents that were drugged up or neglectful, or things that they had on their mind was completely different. I got shuffled from home to home to home to home, and school to school to school to school to school. I was always in a place where I was the new kid on the block. And that new kid on the block position, I remember relying on skill sets. Like, I was very athletic, and lucky for me, I was always good at kickball. And for some reason, that would go ahead and help me get one step ahead or whatever else. But what I did realize was that I started seeking the approval of others before success happened. I had to get everybody to go, yes, this is great, you're great, this is fun, they did all of that. For years and years and years, I played that powerlessness card. And what happens when you start seeking others' approval is you stop following your calling. You stop following your heart. You stop following what it is that you want. You start following somebody else. And that's why powerlessness is the quiet self-saboteur. It is the most silent self-saboteur you can have in your life. So what do we do to regain us? Well, the first is, I'm okay. Let's say, good morning. I'm sorry I'm late. I'll be watching. Okay. We have somebody new on here, Morgane. I realized that not long ago, the more open my heart is, the stronger I am. Yes. Walking around with my heart wide open does not make me weaker. I look at this as my heart field being bigger and therefore more capable of handling anything it is thrown at me. Yes. Smart says, and sometimes we're conditioned to react a certain way to certain situations until we learn new strategies and resources. Yes, you guys are brilliant. Barb says, this is full of challenges, Suzanne. That's what makes it so exciting to live. When someone tells me you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, my answer is, that's your perception. You have the power to change that. Love to see their face in that moment. Yes. That's right. I always tell someone, I'm not in charge of what you think of me. I'm in charge of what I think of me. And that's like a big power for me. I'm not in charge of what you think of me. I'm in charge of what I think of me. You can think whatever you want. And, you know, when somebody says you're stupid, I always think, so what do you want me to do? Break out in a rash? What do you want when you say that? If they say that, ask them, what do you want? Do you want a feeling of power? Barb, that is the evolved person's behavior. We need to strive to take that approach. Freddie says, finding your power changes the victim to a survivor and existence to success. Yes, that is so important, because powerlessness can be forced upon you. Then powerless can be forced upon you by you. And so whatever trauma happened back in the day, whatever happened over here, just realize that even warriors, I mean, Navy SEALs feel vulnerable. And how we handle vulnerable, I'll tell you how I handle my vulnerability. I name it. If I say something like, you know, I'm feeling vulnerable about saying this, or I'm feeling like I'm not sure if I should do this conversation, I'm a little nervous, maybe I don't have enough, you know, love bank with you. But what I would like to share with you is, and then I'll say it. But then one of the things is, you don't master vulnerability. You become your vulnerable self. That's the natural human state. What I find helps me with powerlessness is kindness and gratitude. Kindness means that I'm the adult, and my little kid inside me that's feeling unsure and powerless gets to hear from me that it's okay to feel unsure and powerless. And I'll even picture holding my hand in that moment. I will hold my hand and pull little me close to me and go, don't you worry, girlfriend, I got you. And as long as I have me, then I can go forward. And so what I imagine could happen if I get disapproval from other people goes away. And I just keep stepping out. If you have kindness and courage towards yourself, not courage as in discipline, we're going to be courageous, but kindness, gentleness, and courage towards yourself, then what ends up happening is that you can ground down enough to love yourself enough out of your powerlessness by just accepting that sometimes a human being feels powerless. Just like a dog or a cat or a bird, the human condition is vulnerability. Tomorrow's not promised to you. The next minute isn't promised to you. We go around the day and we look at our children. They make us feel vulnerable. We look and we think, oh my God, if anything happened to my children, I don't know what I'd do. Or we love our spouse so much, especially me, that the vulnerability of anything happening to them. Many of you have already been through the pain and the tragedy of loss, whatever that loss is. And loss always has a vulnerable feeling. It makes you feel powerless. Sometimes you didn't get to say what you wanted to say, or sometimes you don't know what you want to do in your life. But that feeling of powerlessness, if you could just be willing to feel it the first time and name it. I'm feeling gentle, or I'm feeling nervous, or I'm feeling scared, or I'm feeling uncertain. Those are all feelings of powerlessness. And when you get to the point where you can feel that, you can definitely take a different action. Suzanne is saying, once we're educated, we have the power to become anything we want. Yes, right, girlfriend. But until we have the awareness, we can be stuck in powerlessness, toxic, abusive self-talk, and relationships. Gotta love Vickie's continued education to break through the old habits of negative self-talk. Thank you. If Wayne is on the call today, Wayne, look at the bookshelf back here. I've changed it. But this book here, right there, Champagne Thoughts and Caviar Power, addresses that one. Thanks for that plug, Suzanne. Smart says, the wisdom from all of today's participants in comments is powerful. It is, you guys. That could be an ebook with what we have on this live today. Thank you for sharing your experience and soul-inspired input. I am in awe of the power of you. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you tomorrow, Pacific time, 9 o'clock. Mountain time, 10 a.m., 12 o'clock on the East Coast. And I want to let you know something. I feel really honored by your wisdom today. And my heart is super, super tender for that. Thank you for holding space with me to be able to share my experience of that. Today, we made a difference in the world. We put a big ripple in the communications that go out there. I'm really honored. Thank you. I see your love, everybody. Have a great day. Bye.